Okay, in 9.1, we are starting to talk about area and perimeter of different shapes. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, so we're trying to develop and apply formulas for the areas of triangles, triangles and special quadrilaterals. And we're also going to talk about not only area, but also perimeter. The first shape we're going to talk about are parallelograms, and it's going to be a little confusing for us at first because we skipped chapter 6, but parallelograms include rectangles and squares. So whenever we have rectangles or squares, or parallelograms are the ones that are slanted a little bit, we know that the formula for area is just base times height. And remember, the base and the height are always perpendicular. If you need me to do that annoying song and dance, I will do it for you, no problem. But it's base times height and base times height. Okay? And the reason why, remember my 7th grade teacher, she took a parallelogram. I'm sorry, actually, I take that back. She took a rectangle. And we know that a rectangle is base times height. We've been doing that since you guys were super little. We know that the formula to find the area of a rectangle is just base times height. And what she did was she cut out a right triangle. She cut that out and she moved it to the other side of the rectangle. And that looks like this picture right here. So now this is our new parallelogram. We didn't change, we didn't add anything or subtract anything. All we did was cut off one part and stick it on the other side. So the area equals base times height still works. Our formula for the original rectangle still works even though it's slanted a little bit. So the base and the height are always perpendicular. That's something we have to always remember. So some basic questions that I could ask you are like, what's the area and perimeter of the rectangle with a height of 3 and a base of 7? So to find the area, you know it is base times height, and you know that the base and the height are perpendicular, so 3 times 7 is 21. And if I wanted you to find the perimeter, you know perimeter is when you walk all the way around a shape, so you add up all the sides. Perimeter, you add up all the sides. And so if this side's 7, this side's going to be 7, and this side's 3, then this side's going to be 3, and if you add them up, 3 plus 7 and 3 plus 7, you get that the perimeter is 20. Now, how can I make this more harder for you guys? Because you guys have been doing this stuff for a couple years now. How I can make it more challenging is if I throw in some x's. So let's say we have that same problem, except now we have that the base is 3x and the height is 5x. And I want to figure out what the area is and what the perimeter is. Well, you know, area is base times height, so all you're going to do is multiply those together. So 3x times 5x, 3 times 5 is 15, and x times x is x squared. You cannot solve for x. I know you really, really want to, but you can't. That's our area. That's all we can do. For perimeter, if this side's 5x, then this side is 5x. If this side is 3x, then this side is 3x. And so we're going to add them all up. 3x plus 5x plus 3x plus 5x is going to be 16x. And that's all we can do. We are done. Okay, so the questions in your book are going to be a little bit more complicated. Find the area of the parallelogram. This one is slanted. Sometimes some of the dimensions are going to be missing. Sometimes they're going to all be there. Let's actually do number 2 first. Let's say I give you this parallelogram and I tell you that I tell you that the base is 10, and let's say that this is 10 as well, and that this is 8. Which ones are going, you know it's a parallelogram, so you know that the formula for area is base times height. The question is now, which ones are your base and your height? You have to look for the perpendicular sides. So the 8 and the 10 are perpendicular, so the 8 and the 10 are going to be your base and your height, and your answer is going to be 80. All right, going back to number 1. Again, you have to look for your perpendicular sides, and that would be these ones. Right? So we don't know what the height is. It's not given to us. When it's not given to us, we're probably going to have to do Pythagorean's theorem. In this case, this red triangle that they give us is a right triangle, so we can do Pythagorean's theorem to figure out what the height is, because if this side is 34, then that means that this side is 34. So you're going to do Pythagorean's theorem to find the height. And so that's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And you get, let's, instead of a, I love a, but let's put in an h so we remember that we're actually solving for the height. Sometimes people just solve for a and they think they're done. We're not done. We're close, but we're not done. We're going to solve for the height. So you do your math. 30 squared is 900. 34 squared is like, I think, 1,156. And we have h squared. We're going to have to subtract by 900. And then we have h squared equals 256. And then to get h by itself, we have to square root. And we get h equals 16. All right, and again, the first thing we did was we just solved for h. Now going back to our picture, we know that h is now 16. This is our height. So the second step is we want to figure out what the area is. So we know that the formula is base times height, and they have to be perpendicular to each other. So sometimes people get really confused. Which one are we talking about here? We know for sure what the height is. We know the height is 16. But do we use the 30? Do we use the 11? Or do we use 41? Which one are we going to use? We're actually only going to use the 11 because the 11 is actually part of the parallelogram. So it's going to be 11 times 16, which equals 176 square millimeters. Some people are like, well, why isn't the 30 part of it? The 16 is not really part of the triangle. Parallelogram. The 16 actually is part of the parallelogram. Going back to number 2, notice how I drew the height inside of the parallelogram. I could have just as easily, drawn the height over here and extended it out. And this still would have been 8. Even though I drew it outside, it still is part of your parallelogram. I could have drawn it inside. And the same thing goes for this 16. It's in here somewhere. It can be drawn in here. And this 11 is also part of it, just like this 10 is part of it. We wouldn't have, if I had moved it out over here, let's say I would have moved the 8 over here. This is still 10 up here. Let's say I moved it out, let's see. 10. Say I moved it out and this one's 2. This 2 has nothing to do with the parallelogram. It wasn't in our original, we didn't use it anywhere in our formula. We know that the area is 80. So this 30, it's exterior. It has nothing to do with our parallelogram. Only use the 2 ones that are perpendicular and actually part of the parallelogram. So this 11 and this 16 are actually part of the parallelogram. Okay, so that's the first type of question I'm going to ask you is just to find the area. And sometimes you might have to do Pythagorean theorem to figure out what the missing dimensions are. The second type of question I'm going to ask you is to find a missing dimension, but I'm going to tell you what the area is. So again, I already told you what the area is, and you're going to have to work backwards to find out one of the missing dimensions. So in this case, I want you to find the base, and I tell you it's a parallelogram. I tell you what the one other dimension is, and I tell you what the area is. This is all important information. First of all, starting off with a parallelogram, you know that that's base times height, and then you're going to plug in what you know. You know area is 28 square yards. You know that the height is 56 yards, and we don't know what the base is. So the base is what we're looking for. So we want to get this all by itself. The opposite of multiplying by 56 is dividing by 56. So you're going to divide both 6 by 56 yards. Divide by 56 yards. And you're going to get that the base equals a half of a yard. All right, and if you're not sure, you can always plug it back in. So I want you to go ahead and try to solve number 4. But the only difference between number 3 and number 4 is I threw in some variables at you. That's A-okay. I know you guys can do this. All right, okay. Twist my arm. I'll do it for you guys. Do it with you guys. We start off. We want to figure out what the height is. They tell you what the base is, and they tell you what the area is. This is all important information, and they tell you it's a rectangle. All right. So we know that the formula to find the area of parallelograms is base times height. So you plug in your knowns. The area is 5x squared minus 5x. We know that the base is 5 and the height is what we're looking for. You're solving for h. So what's the opposite of multiplying by 5? It's dividing by 5. So you divide every single thing by 5, and you're going to get x squared minus x equals the height. Cannot solve for x. That is your answer. Okay, so the second type of question I can ask you is, given the area and one dimension, find another dimension. The third type of question I'm going to ask you to go one step further. This time, I'm only giving you one dimension like I did before. So if this is 6 feet, I'm also giving you the area like I did before. So can we figure out what that missing side length is? Yeah, and that's going to be the very first thing you do. Find the missing side. And the reason why we want to find the missing side and do just what we did in this second type of example is because I want you to then take it a step further and tell me what the perimeter is. So I'll do this one with you, and then you guys can definitely do number 6 on your own. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is find the missing side. We know it's a rectangle, so the area is base times height. We know that the area is 12x. We know that, maybe we don't know what the base is. We'll call this the base. And the height, we'll call it height 6. Okay, we want to figure out what the base is. So the opposite of multiplying by 6 is dividing by 6. And you get that the base equals 2x. So over here, the base is 2x. So this is 2x, and this is going to be 2x, and this side 6, and this side 6. So we found the missing side. Now that we've found the missing side, we're going to go ahead and find the perimeter, because we know what all the sides are now. And to find the perimeter, we just add them all up, and we have to combine like terms. So what's 2x plus 2x? That's 4x. And what's 6 plus 6? That's 12. So your perimeter is 4x plus 12, not 16, sorry. And that's your final answer. You're done. So try and figure out what number 6 is. Okay. The next shape we're going to talk about are triangles. The formula for triangles is base times height divided by 2. And again, it's super important that you remember that the base and the height are always perpendicular to each other. And just really quickly, the reason why it's base times height divided by 2 is if you take a rectangle, you know that the formula for a rectangle is base times height. Let's say you go ahead and you take that rectangle and you cut it in half. Well, what kind of shape do we have? We have a triangle, and we took the area and we cut it in half. That's how you get the area of a triangle. All right, so let's, for this one over here, again, it's super important that you know that the base and the height are always perpendicular. So in this case, we'd want to do this one times this one. And they don't tell us what that side is. So what do you think we're going to have to do? Pythagorean theorem. So the first thing we need to do is find that missing side because it's important. That's our base. So you're going to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared and plug in our knowns. The 20 is going to be your c because it's across from the 90 degrees and it's the biggest side. And a, we'll call that 12. And let's we'll keep b because we'll remember b is our base. So 144 plus b squared equals 400. And you subtract 144, you get b squared equals 256. Square root it, and you get b equals 16. Now that you have this side, you can go ahead and use the formula. Base times height divided by 2. And you know that's 12 times 16 divided by 2. And that's going to be 96 square meters. That's your final answer. All right. So that's just a basic, straightforward question. Use the formula and plug in what we know and get what the area is. And sometimes you might have to use Pythagorean theorem to find out what that other side is. The other type of question I'm going to ask you is I'm going to give you the area, and I'm going to ask you to find a missing dimension, just like what we did with the parallelograms. So you have to start off with the formula that we're talking of the shape we're talking about. So in this case, since it's a triangle, it's going to be base times height divided by 2. You're going to plug in what you know. So area is 15x squared, base we don't know, and height is 5x. And we have to divide it by 2 because it's a triangle. So what I do, there's lots of ways to solve this, but the opposite of dividing by 2 is multiplying by 2. So that's my first step that I want to do. And so 15x squared is going to be 30x squared equals b times 5x. And then the opposite of multiplying by 5x is dividing by 5x. So now we have b equals 6x because x squared divided by x is x. So our base is 6x. All right, those are two types of questions I can ask you about triangles. The third shape, we're almost done here, I promise. The third shape is a trapezoid. I have a fun story to tell you guys about how my 7th grade teacher explained to me this formula, but trust me when I say for now that the area is half the height times the sum of the bases. So the first, question number 9, super straightforward. Go ahead and plug in the knowns and tell me what the area is. Some of you guys, again, it's okay that you're not sure exactly what a trapezoid is. It's just important to remember that the bases are parallel and the base and the height are still going to be perpendicular. So that's one way, if they give you a picture, to know what's the difference between the bases and the height. All right, so you're just plugging it in. So area equals half of the height times the sum of the bases, and the bases are 9 plus 12. And you just do your order of operations. 9 plus 12 is 21. 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. So 1.5 times 21 gets you your answer, 31.5 squared inches. All right, again, just like with the triangles and with the parallelograms, they can also ask you to work backwards. So if the area is 231, I want you to find the base. So you have to start with the formula. Area equals half the height times the sum of the bases. So in this case, the area is 231. We know the height is perpendicular line, so that's 11. We know one of the bases is 23, and we don't know what the other base is, and that's what we're looking for. All right, so again, there's lots of ways you can solve this. How I'm going to solve it is I'm going to say 11 divided by 2 is 5.5. And then rather than distributing 5.5, I'm going to divide both sides by 5.5 to get rid of the need of parentheses. So then I think that is, oh no, 231 divided by 5.5 is 42. Okay, so now we have 42 equals 23 plus b. Subtract 23 from both sides, and you get that b equals 19, and that's your final answer. Okay, so it's either straightforward, find the area, or work backwards and find the side length. And the last thing you're going to work on are rhombuses and kites. And again, I know you guys aren't really familiar with what these are yet, but we'll go back in 2012 and talk about what they are. But trust me when I say that the formula is going to be the diagonal times the other diagonal divided by 2. And remember, that's how you find the area for both shapes. And the diagonals go from one corner to the opposite corner. So this is a diagonal right there. That kind of looks like it. There you go. Okay. So we cannot do this one yet. We don't have all of our tools to figure that out, but we can do number 11, 12, and 13. Number 13 has some very fun algebra that we can do. So I'm going to remind you guys how to do that in class. But for number 11, it says find the diagonal of a rhombus in which the first diagonal is 3x and the area is 12xy. So we're working backwards in this one, and we know that the formula, find the area, is d1 times d2 divided by 2, and you're going to fill in your knowns. So the area is 12xy. We know one diagonal is 3x, another diagonal is we don't know, and we have to divide it by 2. So lots of ways to solve this. I'm going to go ahead and multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of this fraction. And then you're going to have 24xy equals 3x times d. And remember, the d is what we're solving for. So the opposite of multiplying by 3x is dividing by 3x. And 24 divided by 3 is 8. The x is crossed out, and you're left with y, and that is your answer. 12, same setup. So I want you to go ahead and see if you can do 12 on your own. I will talk about how to do 13 in class. 14, we do not have the tools to do that yet, but we will learn it in 2012.